Microsoft becoming the world's most valuable company, beating out Apple, it's always like a 1-2 like fight between them.
Hmm.
And what I like about, or what I liked about this story and the fact that you put it in the notes was that they're such different organizations. Like
Hmm.
Microsoft hasn't had, I would say Apple's done really, really well with um, their um, like tech products, the iPhone and so on and so forth, and they've done really well with that. But Microsoft hasn't had a product like that forever. Like they never really, I mean, they had Windows, but apart from that,
Yeah.
they didn't have like, they failed in almost every other aspect, yet they're really sticking it to Apple, like as such a
Hmm.
big company. And it's just a message around the fact that becoming, you don't need to be necessarily at the top of everyone's mind, and you don't necessarily need to be in the news all the time. If you can
Yeah.
become the central, reliable nervous system to more people, become the pickaxe for the gold miners, not the gold miners themselves, because guess what? You can supply every single gold miner, whether they find gold or not, you're going to do well.
Hmm.
Whereas if you want to go mine for gold, yeah, sure, you'll probably hit it big if you find gold, but what happens to the majority that don't find gold? That sort of
Yeah.
message.
The thing I think is interesting is if you sort of look back on Microsoft and Apple from the start, Microsoft and Apple at one point were competing in operating systems before we had sort of iPhone, iPad, blah, blah, blah. And then Apple took off with those extra products. Microsoft tried to compete and just couldn't quite compete as much in that space. And now they've got a new CEO. I can't remember when she came in. I think it's in the article. But their new approach is essentially to be boring, as I mentioned previously. Um,
Hold on, are you
and I
talking about
think
Satya Nadella?
maybe,
I don't think they've changed since Satya Nadella. I thought,
oh, maybe I read that wrong.
well, when Satya Nadella became CEO of Microsoft, when was it? Um, 2018.
Okay, like fairly
So
recently.
recent history, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
In terms
Um,
of sort of CEOs coming in and coming up with a new strategy, that's quite recent because it does take that time to come in, find out what's going on, implement things. And obviously, the boring strategies paid off for them. They've just made products that are reliable and accessible in terms of, I mean, if you look at the Surface, I think they've got various levels of Surface that are really accessible at all kind of price points. They've just got the Xbox doing its Xbox stuff, all the operating systems, things like that. They've just not tried to be fancy and crazy branded and all that sort of stuff. They've just made
or
good.
viral as well, I would say.
Mm,
Not that they haven't tried to be. I think if they could have been, like, they tried with the Zune, they tried with what, Windows Phone, they've tried. Um,
hmm.
but I think what they've done instead is become, like, they've got Microsoft Azure, they've got 365, they've got sort of, they compete with Google and Amazon in a way that Apple just simply cannot, and no one looks at Apple as a enterprise solutions provider.
No,
I mean,
because
they want
they're
to
too
be.
focused on the products, and that was great for them. But I think at this point, that's where they're going to sit sort of stagnant until they start innovating in other things and introducing products that don't have notches that break and things like that.
Well, they've to me, Apple's always put design ahead of um, function's the wrong word, but I don't know. They've always seemed to prioritize design, is what I would say. Um,
Mm.
where Microsoft has just wanted to be that classic, always there, just reliable as much as possible.